Hi, this is Sandeep Mitra here, and now we're going to discuss about how we should have difficult conversations. We are taking three of the most common issues around which we need to engage in difficult conversations as a manager or as a supervising senior. One would be, let's say, something like poor rating and performance, or something even more serious, which is related to, let's say, somebody, because of the poor performance, he will be missing out on the increment or getting a lower than average increment. Uh, Another option can be that you want to put somebody on a performance improvement plan, which is a PIP, uh, or even issues around misconduct or, let's say, breaking company policies, and things like that. So these are some of the examples of difficult conversations. So let's start by understanding that what makes a conversation difficult. So how would you know that this is a difficult conversation? So firstly, the stakes are high, both for you as well as the person concerned. The opinions, they differ, the emotions run very strong, and the outcome significantly impacts either their lives or has very serious negative consequences on their lives. So when these conditions are valid, then you're sure that yes, you're going to get into a difficult conversation. Now, how do we recognize what are the signs? When you are having the conversation with the other person, what are the kind of signs that he will exhibit, which you can kind of uh, foresee in terms of his reaction? So, one would be the physical signs. Now, physical signs related to anxiety or stress, for example, like he's sweating or the heartbeat is, beating very fast. There is maybe stomach ache or dry throat, anything that exhibits tension. Okay. The second could be emotional signs. Now, you will experience, I mean, the other person will experience emotions like fear or anger or rejection or dejection. Okay. Behavioral signs can be something like they're keeping quiet or leaving the conversation. They want to run away or go away, or either, that's raising the voice or even not saying what they really think. So these physical, emotional, and behavioral signs are something that you should be able to anticipate when you are getting into a difficult conversation. Now let's understand how we should approach a difficult conversation. The first step, you should start with yourself. Ask yourself whether the matter is crucial or important in the context of impact on the organization's objectives, the impact on the individual, and maybe the team and yourself. Let's say the impact on you and expectations from your role about that particular behavior or the incident. Now, so you should be aware not just about your motives, but also your emotions. Now, you should be very, very clear about the outcome. We already discussed what are the possible outcomes around which you would need to have a difficult conversation. So, what would be your motives? And be genuine and sincere in understanding and articulating the motives. So, what do you really want for yourself? That's first. The second is, what do you want for the others, the person concerned, and also the others in the team, for example? And what do you really want for the relationship between you and the other person? Is it a complete breakdown and you are going away, moving apart, or is it that you're trying to mend or build on the gaps or the deficiencies? And how would you behave if you really wanted that out? Okay, so once you have this self awareness about your motives and also the emotions that you might experience while you are having this particular conversation, we talked about the signs, the physical, emotional, and behavioral signs about the other person. You should also think about how that conversation is going to affect you emotionally. So, self awareness and self management of emotions is very, very important. So, start with yourself, focus on your motives and your emotions, and how you're going to what kind of emotions you will feel and how you want to control them. The next step is that you clarify what you don't want and also add to this what you do want. Now, it's both important. And let me explain this with an example, because when you are going to have the communication, the chances are the other person might misinterpret or misunderstand what you're saying. So you should very, very clearly say what you want. Let's say, you're talking to a colleague or a subordinate and you want him to be more reliable. So you say that, I feel very disturbed of being delegated your work at the last minute because you haven't done it. And what I don't want. So that is what you do want, that you want him to be more reliable. Okay. And what you don't want is that you don't want to have a heated argument which will cause tension and spoil the relationship. Okay. So, you know, uh, articulating in this way clarifies and makes it very easy for the other person to respond and react to what you're going to discuss. The next point is do it in a safe environment. So you have to think what kind of environment, both in terms of the mental mindset of the person, and what kind of environment will be suitable for having this difficult conversation. Sometimes it may be useful to move out of the office, let's say to a restaurant or to an open space, so that when you kind of foresee that the other person is going to break down or react aggressively. So depending on the situation, you must create an environment where the person is relaxed and there is no disturbance, of course, when you are having the conversation, right? Now, after that, it's important to ensure that uh, when you start the conversation, you get the feeling that the person, his safety is at risk. Now, what I mean by the person's safety at risk, let's take a step back and understand how human psychology works when we are exposed to certain stimulus. Our brain, the way our brain functions when we receive a stimulus. So, a stimulus usually comes from any one of the five senses. Either we see something or hear something, we touch something or feel something. So, like that, once the signal is picked up by your brain, it goes to the thalamus. And then finally, it comes to something called a amygdala. Now, amygdala is that part of our brain which controls the emotions. Okay. And so the final response or the action that we take in response to the stimulus is modulated, or let's say it passes through the amygdala, where the emotions also get attached to it. Now let's take a couple of examples. The first example is very easy to understand. Let's say we touch fire. Okay. So once we touch fire, we put our hand, we sense the high temperature, and then we withdraw our hand. This is stored in our brain. So next time, when we see fire, we don't even try to touch it because our brain has stored that information that this is going to hurt me, right? Uh, Now, sometimes there is a short signal, instead of passing through the thalamus and then coming to the amygdala, because we are exposed to the same kind of stimulus, we tend to respond or react without understanding the full context. Now, again, let's take an example. Imagine a person is suddenly shouting, "Tiger, tiger," and starts running in front of you. Your natural tendency would be to also start running, following that other person. You haven't seen the tiger. You don't bother to turn around to see if actually there is a tiger chasing you, but you still do that. So this is what we call a amygdala attack, or so typically this response, that's a flight response. The example that I gave you about you running away from the tiger, uh, it could also be a fight response. So either it's a fight or flight. Now, let's understand in the context of a difficult conversation how these responses are exhibited. So, first, let's talk about the flight response. So, either you tend to mask your feelings or your reactions, or you avoid it. You make some excuse like, "I'm so busy, I'm sorry, I can't have this conversation now," or you withdraw. That means you keep quiet. You're silent. You don't respond. Uh, as if you're talking to a wall. These are the ways a person may respond or show the flight response. The fight response are where you try to control the other person, the conversation, or label the other person as, give him some names and, be a little aggressive or even attack the other person verbally. Or even, I'm not saying, it will get into what do you call physical assault or attack, but yes, the kind of body language and words and emotion are very aggressive and attack. Okay, so when these kind of emotions are at play, what is the best way to respond? Obviously, you give time to the other person to feel and get over the response. Be empathetic in your words, your body language, your tone of communication. If somebody is crying, sit silently and wait for it to subside. You should not try to move away from it, but please remember, it's very important to stay absolutely focused on the outcome and your motives. So the emotions are like waves, it will come and go. Give it time, be patient, sense, feel, be empathetic about the emotions, and let it go. Sometimes, you may know something, and even if you know, even if you do know something, pretend as if you don't. Give that other person the chance to express his views or emotions or beliefs, and keep quiet. Sometimes, what happens, the other person may be thinking or reflecting, and our tendency is to say something more or say something again. So resist that temptation and wait for the other person when there is silence. Now, make it safe to share. That is the next point. So, how do you make it safe for the other person to share, other than the environment and the way you are communicating? Focus on two things. One is the mutual purpose. Now, remember, this is whatever difficult conversation you're having is not something personal. You're satisfying your ego or your mood or tempo. It's not that. It's about the organization's priorities, the objectives, standards of performance, or even policies, accepted norms of behavior. So it is not, make that obvious that you care about the other person's goals, aspirations, hopes, and wants. uh, Another thing that you should do is, if you have contributed to that particular issue, whatever little it might be, please own up, please apologize in case you have made a mistake which has negatively affected the other person. So that makes you look vulnerable, and it diffuses the defense of the other person. Because normally what happens is, if you know that the other person is also human and he has made a mistake, he is accepting that and acknowledging that, then the other person also tends to collaborate and cooperate. Sometimes you use that contrast to fix a misunderstanding, like saying what you don't want and what you do want. We discussed that earlier. So address it very, very clearly. Speak honestly without offending. Share the facts, very important. Don't share the feelings as much as the facts, because the feelings come after the facts, right? And the facts is something on which the emotions may not differ, because both will be aware of the facts. Talk softly, talk tentatively, in a questioning way. In a sense, you may say something and then ask the other person, what is your response to this? How do you feel about it? What was the thought in your mind? So like you are having a story, the story being the sequence of the facts, the impact, and how you relate the facts. You make a story, right? And based on that, then you take the action or you respond. So what we talked about, the amygdala way of processing information. So the other person may not have the same story that you have in your mind. So listen to the other person's story also. Encourage testing. Now, having said all this, let's share a simple tool that you can use to have a difficult conversation. It is acronym for the steps. Each letter stands for one step of the process. Now, it is called a SAGE tool. Uh, The S stands for standard, A stands for action, I stands for impact, and D stands for do or develop. So there can be two things. Either you do something as an action, or you develop, action plan, which can then be implemented. So let me take you through the steps of SAID. So standard, everybody understands it is a standard of performance. Let's say it could be your target, a goal, or something you had agreed to that the person will be achieving. It can be the best practice, or accepted behavior, expectation in terms of what you have set as a standard, right? So first you state that. So this is the standard, this is the target, this is what was expected, and then you move to the action. Now action is, remember, the facts. So what did you observe? You focus on the behavior, the actions, or the words in case it is something to do with communication, and describe how the individual's performance or his behavior, uh, it, you compare it with the goal or with the standard. So what is the difference? If it is a sales target, let's say, and the achievement, then that's numbers. If it is accepted norms of behavior, and something he has done differently, so you bring out that contrast, describe how it is different from the standard. And these are based on facts, real facts, hard data and information, right? And then move to the third element, which is called impact. Now mention what is the impact of the behavior or lack of behavior on the individual, or and the effect happens on four. One is the individual himself, you are the supervisor, so it affects you, the team, and also the organization. So be very, very clear and specific about how that behavior or that lack of behavior has impacted all four stakeholders, right? And so when you articulate that, it's a very logical sequence. You start with what is the standard, and then you move to what is the action, and finally the impact. After you have done this, then you ask if you have taken a decision, you just communicate the decision. So because of this, we have decided in the best interest of the organization and the team, and me personally as the leader of the team, this is what we have decided. And, communicate it like a fact. Uh, if it is something that you want to develop together with the other person, then you ask him that what should be the next steps? How do you want to achieve, make up the shortfall or cover the gap, or depending on the situation, what is it that he will do, right? So it's either do or develop. Remember the D. So this is SAID tool, and it's a sequence of four steps in communication. Of course, you will expect and anticipate the response and how you are going to handle that response. We already discussed that. Now, while we have discussed what all you should do, let me focus for a couple of minutes on what we should not do. The first thing is, don't assume that your viewpoint is obvious. Because different people have different views, they have different opinions, values, beliefs, and using terms like clearly or obviously, these terms, they put the other person off, because he may have a different point of view, and for him that's not obvious, that is not so clear. So that's the first one. The second is, don't exaggerate. Now what is the fact is the fact. Give it, don't try to blow it up, and stretch the truth. So give it exactly the facts, state that. And it is good. The third point is, don't tell others what they should. The word should becomes very aggressive, and the other person will try to defend his position or his stand. So you may soften it, the impact, and say that you might consider. You're saying the same thing, but instead of using the word should, you might consider, or have you thought of, blah blah blah. So the way you frame your sentence is very important. The fourth point is, don't blame the other person for your feelings. Now, say a colleague is interrupting you when you're speaking, and you may want to say, "You make me so angry when you interrupt." But if you do that, there is a good chance that the other person, you get into an argument, the other person will start defending, no, 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 if you are getting angry, how am I responsible for that? So instead of apologizing or agreeing to change the behavior, they will become defensive. So what you can say, when you interrupt me abruptly or so quickly, I feel hurt or disrespected. So you're taking it on yourself, right? And not blaming the other person. The fifth is, don't challenge somebody's integrity or character. Now, if somebody has done a misconduct which is, let's say, unethical or wrong or unprofessional, don't use these particular words. What you did was unethical, because when you say something that threatens their core sense of self-esteem, they will shift their mind from the issue at hand to defending their character. Our objective is to discuss the issue and find a solution or take a decision or outcome. But the choice of words which challenges the character or integrity can derail your conversation. So start with phrases that questions or conveys suboptimal or undesirable performance. Now suggest that something like, let's say, missing deadlines detracts from the company's mission, okay, rather than saying it is unprofessional. Uh, Something like giving wrong data, you know. So you say it is unethical. No, you don't say it is unethical. You say that it is inconsistent with the company's core values. Okay. So if you communicate in that way, then you're sure that the other person is not going to feel attacked or threatened, and he's going to open up and respond positively. The next point, the sixth point is, don't say it is not personal and don't take it personally when actually, they know that it is quite personal. I mean, you're giving somebody the bad news that there is no increment coming up, even though the cost of living index is going up 7-8%. That's really impacting the family, the entire, it's a personal thing. So when you say it is, don't take it personally, and you are degrading demoting the other person, or putting him on a PIP, or giving him a bad or unfavorable marks, in the assessment, right? So the other person is hurt, or he will be angry. Okay, so it is likely to happen when you're bringing up all these things, and telling them it is not personal is only going to add to, let's say, insult to injury, right? So better not to avoid that. In fact, I would suggest that say that you actually care and you know that this is personal, and it is important to them. So that makes you, that's really empathetic. When you actually say that it is going to affect them personally. Okay, so for this session, so much, for having the difficult conversations. I hope you have enjoyed this session, and I look forward to you practicing, what we discussed here, and getting a good response and a better way of having the difficult conversations. Thank you so much.